not always.
I guess one of my questions, and maybe I could bring you and Laura in on this, but Jane Jacobs celebrated diversity, density, the mix of people, all of the things that we're all talking about, mingling, people on different schedules. You're all saying, well, but these principles are now being adopted into city planning in this wonderful way by everybody. But we're looking at cities that are more class divided than ever before, more racially divided than ever before. We have, in this city, a net exflux now. Is there such a thing as an exflux? Mm-hmm. A net exodus of African Americans and Puerto Ricans from New York City for the first time, since before Jane Jacobs' time. I was just yesterday up at the Brooklyn Armory site where you've had this extraordinary community organization managed to secure a community benefits agreement from the developer. But the developer's plan is to make the largest ever skating rink right there in the Bronx on Knightsbridge Avenue. So these community benefits will be contingent on a skating rink suddenly becoming a really huge success in the middle of the Bronx. Maybe the NHL is about to look very different. But my question is, how do we have this happy story about city building in a very scary time, I think, for the principles that Jane talked about and the way that she lived? Greenwich Village is a very different place. Chelsea is a very different place. Tribeca,
well, I think you bring up...
My neighborhood, Soho, used to be pleasantly scary. Not anymore. You want to go first?
No, I think you bring up a very interesting point, which is why I mentioned the Upper West Side at the beginning, because when I go to, let's say, Baisley Park, which is a NYCHA project north of JFK, and I look at that and I think, first of all, I can't even get there by subway. And there are these Corbusian buildings sitting in these unusable lawns with fences around them and playgrounds that are broken and no place to shop, no place to eat. It's completely disconnected. It's isolated from the urban fabric. And it really is a huge challenge of, if you want an experience of being able to get places easily and enjoy nature a few steps from your house and have all the things that those of us who live in Tribeca or the Upper West Side have, how do you start to, what's the equation to bring that into these other neighborhoods? And I think that it does involve public-private partnerships. I think it involves everything we're talking about. I think the developers in New York are progressive and they're smart and they want to do a good job. I think that that developers who focus on building community are really able to do it. In the South Street Seaport, where there was this abandoned block, the developers there actually handpicked mom and pop restaurants to put in there. They really worked hard to get the community scale. They didn't just, go to Starbucks and go to Citibank. And so, I think, how can we bring the right people together to start to weave this back in to the communities? And we're looking at that with BIG, where we're focusing on the Sandy recovery and how do we protect Lower Manhattan and other neighborhoods from the next surge. And on the one hand, you need to make a big infrastructure move. The question is, after Robert Moses, can New York stomach a major move? Could we build a green belt like Chicago has all around Lower Manhattan and have it be a levee that's occupied with wonderful, that looks like Riverside Park all around Lower Manhattan? Maybe not. So then you start to scale that down and you say, well, what can we do in Hudson River Park? What can we do in Tribeca? What can we do in Chelsea? What can we do at the Tip? And then you come around to the housing above the Brooklyn Bridge, and you say, well, how can we protect those communities, maybe with a major park move, with a levee, with a subway running under it and the FDR under it, so we're creating this wonderful parking connection to the waterfront. And then how can we weave that, take the Lower East Side and start to weave it into those isolated buildings and create places? So that's really the challenge that we're grappling with as we speak.
Did anybody else notice how all her really good suggestions involved a lot of landscaping?
Yes, because I have to say that dollar for dollar, pragmatically speaking, the cheapest way to do flood protection is with earth structures. It is cheaper than floodgates. It is cheaper than all the stuff people have to do to their buildings. It is so.
All right, so just lest anyone think we're only going to dump on New York, San Francisco has the same problem.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I feel like we're not just talking about making places. We're actually talking about building community and making places where very different kinds of people who have either very different opportunities or very different struggles can come together and find value in each other's success.
Do things.
Yeah. And so to me, being an arts person, not someone who makes buildings, it's so much about, and Mary, I think the way you articulate it is quite beautiful. It's so much about how we integrate our value into a system. I think what we need is new social systems. We need a new continuum or an understanding of a continuum that connects, through partnerships and programs, art making, place making, workshops, mentorships, jobs. Like, we need to make connections and understand how we actually all are in this together